What is up, world, and welcome back to the Backseat Coaches podcast. And today, I'm in the host chair. Surprising? Me too. Anyways, so the reason I'm in the host chair is because we decided to switch it up. Last couple episodes, been talking about the NBA, from MVP stuff to the unpredictable March Madness. But today, we're talking about the NFL and the NFL draft. So before we get started, I want to go around the panel and just say who our favorite team is, just so we can get our biases out the way. So I'll go first. I'm a Miami Dolphins fan, and I guess Adrian, you can go next.
I'm a diehard Carolina Panther, but I've got some family in Jacksonville, so I'll rock with the Jaguars today.
Jack.
And I'm also a Panthers fan. Been from North Carolina, always been a Panthers fan. So yeah.
Cam.
Man, the Cam fam, Superman Cam, Panthers all the way, baby.
And Nick.
I am also predictably a Panthers fan. I've also grew up in North Carolina and have been tracking them since Cam Newton was playing quarterback for them.
So I think we know how the panel feels about the NFL, which is perfect because as we segue into our first topic, a couple of days ago, the New York Jets and Carolina Panthers came to a trade agreement to send quarterback Sam Darnold to the Panthers for a 2021 sixth-round pick, a 2022 second-round pick, and a 2022 fourth-round pick. Guys, what do you think about this trade for not only Sam Darnold but for the Panthers? Nick, start us off.
Considering what we gave up to get him, I do like this trade. We only gave up a sixth-round pick this year and a second and a fourth-round pick next year, and we didn't even give up any players for him. So considering the value and considering how highly touted he was out of USC, I am actually pretty happy with what we were able to do. Of course, we all know that he played for the Jets for 3 years and he struggled, but we also have to realize that we're talking about the New York Jets. So, and he was coached by Adam Gase, which, as Ethan said, he's a Miami fan. He can tell you all about how he ruined Ryan Tannehill and that whole team.
Actually, Tannehill's best statistical season before the Titans was the first year under Gase.
Yeah, but then what happened the second and third year?
He hurt his ACL the second year.
And the third year?
Okay, let's not get into about how the sucked the past couple of years. I think we all know, except for the past 2 years, we've been surprisingly good. All right, okay, yeah. Adrian, you want to go next?
Yeah, Gase isn't a good head coach, but he's not a quarterback damager either, I'd say. I honestly like the trade. I think that it's going to be the more notable of the two recent acquisitions the Panthers have had, even though I think that it will be the one with less overall impact on their winning than the other one, which they quietly also picked up AJ Bouye from Denver. But as far as the Darnold deal goes, I mean, it'll be an interesting quarterback competition in the way that kind of the Foles-Trubisky competition was, where either winner doesn't necessarily feel like a winner, but they definitely both have upside. And while Teddy's a more proven product at this point, Darnold really has a chance to reboot and reset his career here. He's got chemistry with Robbie Anderson already. His best statistical season was with Anderson as a receiver. And he's, only 23 years old, which is a big part of all this.
Jack?
Yeah, I like the trade. Like Nick said earlier, we really didn't give up much for him. And like Adrian said, he's only 23. He's younger than Joe Burrow, last year's number 1 overall pick. And I mean, he really wasn't able to showcase his talents in New York. He didn't have an O-line other than Robbie Anderson. He didn't have much to throw to. And albeit there were times where he made a lot of very bad decisions, I think that could have been helped a lot with better coaching and things like that. So, I mean, I think this is kind of a shot in the dark. We don't really know how good he will be. But given the fact that we didn't give up a whole lot for him, I really do like the trade, and I think that it could work out big time.
Cam, any thoughts?
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of this trade, actually. I didn't think we gave up very much. And, I'm not like a lot of the social media haters with Sam Darnold. I'm still pretty high on this guy. I know he hasn't proven it yet, but I was watching some highlights this week, and the guy's still got potential. He's got a good arm downfield, really good pocket presence, and a good escapability. And personally, Bridgewater is obviously better, and there's no doubt about that. But with the downfield passing, with the weapons that we've got on the outside as the Panthers, I want to see a gunslinger back there that can really air it out. So I really like the Darnold trade, and I'm looking on NBC News right now, NBC Sports actually, and it's reporting that multiple teams are interested in trading for Teddy Bridgewater. So it'll be very interesting to see how the whole quarterback situation shapes out going forward.
Okay, so assuming Sam Darnold wins the starting job or Teddy Bridgewater is traded in the coming weeks or months, what are some reasonable expectations? Could he have a Ryan Tannehill-like bounce-back season where he goes to a new team that's better suited to his play style and just starts exploding? Or do you think, he's very hit or miss? Adrian?
Oh, he could absolutely have a Tannehill-like bounce back in the way that Tannehill's bounce back was accompanied by one of the best 3 running backs in the league that year. Let's not forget that Tannehill's, career resurgence, we'll call it, was accompanied by the fact that he was no longer the primary threat on the team. He had a strong rushing game to hide behind, and it gave him play action opportunities. Teddy, I guess if you put him in the right situation with a guy, that could happen. But at the same time, I think that his play speaks for itself. It's not that he's an atrocious quarterback or anything. He's just a very safe, very pedestrian player. And I think that that'll stand true no matter where he goes.
Nick?
Yeah, I agree with Adrian. I think that considering that this will be his best team that he's had since becoming going pro, I think that he could have a sort of Tannehill resurgence. Just due to the fact that he has an actual good NFL team around him and talented players around him and competent offensive line and competent playmakers.
Jack?
Yeah, I also agree. Obviously the talent, but I think underrated thing is that, Joe Brady as being the offensive coordinator of the Panthers, I think that could be huge. Going from a guy like Adam Gase to a guy like Joe Brady, who, we've seen at LSU and in the past, he's an offensive mastermind. I think this is a guy that could definitely turn around Sam Darnold's career for the better.
Cam?
Pump the brakes a little bit, fellas. I'm thinking that this is not going to be quite the Ryan Tannehill resurgence that we're talking about here, guys. Sam Darnold is still young. I know I'm high on him, and I know he's got a lot of weapons around him. But with a lot of weapons comes a lot of pressure. With a lot of weapons comes a lot of good decision making. And I still see this guy making a lot of mistakes. I still see this guy being the young player that he is. Only in his, I believe is this his 4th upcoming season or 3rd?
Yes, it
Fourth?
is.
Yeah, so
4th coming up.
It'll be interesting to see what we can do with him with the weapons around him, but I don't see him having this giant throwing out there resurgence. I see him getting better, but I think we got to have realistic expectations for Darnold here.
Yeah, I think the jury is definitely still outside Darnold, and hopefully for Panther Nation and all the Panthers fans around here, hopefully he balls out for y'all and has a bounce back year. But now we're going to transition into the NFL draft. And to me, one of the most intriguing storylines has been the seemingly kind of out of nowhere stock drop of Justin Fields. This is a guy that took Ohio State to the CFP National Championship game, where he didn't have the greatest game against Alabama, but he did have a very impressive showing in the game before against Clemson. So, guys, why do you think Justin Fields' stock is dropping? We'll start with Cam this time.
Man, that's a tough one. I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure because I watched his pro day highlights, and I thought he looked phenomenal in pro day. What did he run? A 4.46, I think, for a quarterback.
I think it was a 4.4.
It was 4.4. Yeah, it was unbelievable. I'm really high on Justin Fields. I know that he's just an unbelievably hard worker, and that's where I find that he is is best suited, and somebody's going to get this guy, and he's going to be a gem. I know I read a little bit about Justin Fields. He's on a plant-based diet. He does a bunch of crazy things to change his body for the better, and I think this is a guy that's gonna be a gem for some NFL team. So I honestly have no clue.
Nick, any thoughts?
Yeah, I have no idea why people would rate him even further back than the second best quarterback in the whole draft, but behind Trevor Lawrence, of course. But But yeah, this guy is a really talented player, and I feel like he has a bit of a double standard that somebody like a Zach Wilson or even like a Trey Lance doesn't have, where people will overly criticize a game where he struggles against like a Northwestern team that has a really good defense, but we'll brush off the fact that Zach Wilson had an amazing offensive line and played against subpar teams during his giant year before he declared for the draft. So
struggled against Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, that's my point. He didn't play as good against Coastal Carolina as everybody else. So I just feel like it's a bit of a double standard right now.
Jack? Oh, my bad. Jack?
Yeah, I also really don't know where any of this is coming from. I also have him as the second best quarterback in this draft class. And I think there's not a huge gap, but I think there's a pretty substantial gap in between him and number 3. And what I've heard is the biggest criticism of Justin Fields is he sometimes struggles with like his progressions and reads and things like that. But I think maybe not the main cause, but a really big cause of that is that he, most of the time, because of the offense that he's in, he doesn't need to go to the second progression. The first progression is almost always open when you've got guys like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave to throw to, and in an offense by Ryan Day, I mean, the first progression is usually open, so it doesn't matter. And there's plenty of cases where that doesn't matter, and he's able to go from the second to the third read and be fine. And we see that in the Clemson game, which was one of the biggest games he ever played in, and he was phenomenal. So I don't really see where this criticism is coming from, and it doesn't really make sense to me. So, yeah.
Adrian?
I'm going to be completely honest here. I think that he's a little bit of a head scratcher for a lot of NFL's older fans. They, for some reason, despite this league having been around for a long while, the idea of a black pass first quarterback still eludes a lot of people. I've been going through socials and we saw the 40 time and immediately people start making Kyler and Lamar comparisons, and that's not the type of player this guy is. And when you bring that up in a conversation, the first thing they do is come back at you with the same one or two arguments about his progressions that they read on somebody's blog. And honestly, I think that he catches a lot of flack that he doesn't deserve. When you go and watch him, he's one of the most complete players in this draft. He's second on my quarterback board, and I think that he, more than anybody, it has a chance to be a sleeper pick that's got serious all-pro potential. And saying sleeper pick for somebody who's going to be drafted in the top 10 regardless, this might sound insane, but I think that some guys are going to go over him who really shouldn't.
Cam, you had something else you wanted to share?
Yeah, and Fields is such a dynamic athlete. I think people take that for granted looking at Justin Fields, but like Adrian said, he's a pass first guy. Like, this is not your typical dual threat. He's gonna run, he's gonna get beat up like Cam Newton. This is a guy that's gonna stand back there and he's gonna sling it. And I don't know if you guys watched any of the highlights of the pro day, 65 yards running to his opposite arm side. That is, dude, that's freakish level stuff right there, and on a dime too. Obviously, I hope he goes to somebody with a good offensive line to protect him back there, because this guy's got a huge future. He really does.
Yeah. So what are some teams you think would be best suited to Justin Fields? This can be a team, in the top 10, or a team that you think, they might have a chance to trade up and try to snag him should he drop. Jack?
I think early in the draft, I think it's definitely the 49ers. I mean, they traded up early. So, I mean, they didn't really have that bad of a record to get the third pick. And a lot of the reason that they had the 12th pick in the first place because of injuries. They have a great offense. They have a good offensive line. They have George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. They have an offense led by, why can't I think of his name?
George Kittle?
No, the coach. I don't know why I can't think of his name.
Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, that's right, Kyle Shanahan. But he's shown in the past what he can do with quarterbacks that aren't as talented. So I think that the 49ers are a great fit.
Nick?
Yeah, I would agree with Jack here. I think Justin Fields would do well on just about every team, probably except for the New York Jets, which that wouldn't really be his fault. But I think that the Niners would definitely be the best team for him, just because they're 1 year removed from going to a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. And Garoppolo is a good quarterback, but he's not anywhere near as gifted as Justin Fields is. So if he could go into that system and join the 49ers, I feel like that'd be the best spot for him.
Adrian?
I think that there are a few places I could really see him excelling. Obviously, San Fran would be a great spot for him, but by all accounts, they've got their eyes locked on Mac Jones, which I don't know how I feel about that, but it is what it is. Another couple spots I could see him doing really well. If you give him a year or two in Atlanta, under Matt Ryan on the end of his contract to just learn and soak that up, and then you give him into the league with a veteran Julio, and at that point, nearing his prime Calvin Ridley, that would be a threat team right there. Another team I could see, because there's been a lot of talk about Atlanta dealing that 4. The villain himself, if Emperor Palpatine, Bill Belichick, trades up and snags him, especially if a couple teams let him slip, oh man, that would be a team to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, fuck Bill Belichick. Anyways,
as you wear the Boston shirt.
Yeah, all right, let me be very clear. I may like the Celtics and Red Sox, but I absolutely hate the Patriots. Let me be very clear when I say that. Cam?
I think Adrian said it best. Emperor Palpatine. Oh my gosh. Yeah, if Bill Belichick gets his hands on Justin Fields, that's going to be a problem. And we've seen the acquisitions that this team has made this offseason. The Patriots ain't going nowhere. I know everybody is talking about him, a down year last year, and my beloved Cam Newton out here making videos talking about how he's going to have a MVP season and then throws 6 touchdowns in the season. I don't know how you do that, but I don't think Justin Fields is going to be that kind of talk, no result kind of guy. I think he's going to go in there and he's going to be a beast. And Bill Belichick, he's got the Midas touch, man. He knows what to do with these guys. So that would be amazing to see that.
Yeah, as someone that's clearly the biggest casual football fan ever, I didn't really watch a lot of Justin Fields during his time at Ohio State. But, the main games I watched were, either him versus Michigan or when they were obviously in the CFP, and he balled out. So I'm very confused as to where this whole narrative about him dropping for whatever stupid reason that it feels like. So moving on, picks number 1 and 2 seem to be locked in according to a lot of people. Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence, who some have say is the best quarterback prospect ever, is locked to go number 1. And then at the second overall pick, the New York Jets are poised to take Utah quarterback Zach Wilson. So to a lot of people, the draft really starts at number 3. Guys, who do you think that third overall pick should be? Should it be Mac Jones? Should it be Justin Fields? Or should it be Trey Lance or another guy? We'll start with Nick this time.
I mean, I think that the Jets should pick Justin Fields if I were them, but I know they're going to pick Zach Wilson based on everything.
Zach Wilson's going to go at 2.
Yeah.
We're talking about 3.
Oh, we're talking about 3? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Justin Fields. I've already brought up how he fit in San Francisco with the weapons around him and the coaches around him, and I feel like that's a guy that they should get. And I think it's worth noting that Fields is having a second pro day coming up, and the Niners will show up for that. But yeah, if I were in San Francisco's shoes, I would definitely pick Justin Fields.
Jack.
Yeah, we just talked about it, and I mean, I think Justin Fields should be the pick. I mean, them trading up to 3 shows that they are looking for a quarterback. They don't really. There's nothing else that they would trade up in the draft to get. So they clearly need a quarterback or want to get a quarterback. And I think, like we just talked about, Justin Fields is the best one available. He would fit great into that system, and I think that it's kind of the smart and the obvious pick.
Adrian?
If they hadn't already traded to get it, I would tell them to workshop with the 3rd pick, see what they can put together. But at this point, since, they've already dealt up to get it, and a Deshaun Watson deal for anybody right now is looking hard to make.
Yep.
With that situation. I would say that I think they will get Mac Jones. I think they absolutely should not get Mac Jones. I would say that, Justin Fields is probably the best quarterback choice to take there. But I just really think that it's hard to choose with a team like that at 3 because you want to grab a franchise-defining player, and this year all the franchise-defining quarterbacks we're talking about at least, it's a position where they're okay. They're not great. They're okay. If you're gonna take a guy, I'd take Fields over Jones. Jones looks like he's going to be a Garoppolo 2.0, but it's hard to choose for a team like that at 3.
Cam?
I would hate to be the San Francisco GM in this situation because I really do think that Fields and Mac Jones are both going to get thrown into the fire here. A little less with Mac Jones probably going at 3 and sitting behind Garoppolo for a year, give or take. They could probably throw him in there late in the year. I think it'd just be interesting to see. I want to make this point. My coaches and I on my baseball team were talking about, there is a very defining difference between Alabama Open and NFL Open. And a lot of people are looking at Mac Jones' highlights right now and saying there's a lot of Alabama Open. It's easy to throw to Devontae Smith when there's 15 yards of terrain out in front of you. But it's different when you've got guys draped all over your defender, your wide receivers. And I just see Mac Jones having a really tough time getting adjusted to the league. I think he's a project, honestly, whereas Fields is maybe a guy that you can throw right in there and play right away. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I watched some Mac Jones just because, Alabama's on every primetime game. And he seemed like a guy that, good college quarterback, nothing to take from him. But he didn't seem like that NFL, lottery first round type of guy. He seemed, later round, bring him in. Maybe he develops. Maybe he's a solid backer, which, your team always needs. So why do y'all think Mac Jones' stock has just seemingly skyrocketed? Do you think that's because of the 49ers' ability to develop quarterbacks, or do you think there's something else at play? Cam, I think you had your hand raised.
Well, I wanted to make the point that, for the longest time, I don't think Mac Jones was shooting up. For weeks beginning to start after the season ended, Mac Jones was second round. I see him late first round into the second round, and then he shot up immediately. I just think Mac Jones fits what you're looking for. Physically, he's been under that system. He's played against the better competition. There's no what ifs, right? We look at Zach Wilson. We're going, well, what if he didn't play good competition? Or what if he doesn't meet the size and physical measurements? Mac Jones meets everything you're looking for. But, honestly, I've been surprised in the recently that he's been shot up so much. That's just my thoughts.
Jack?
Yeah, to be honest, I really am not sure why he's going up the draft boards. Like Camp said, it was really relatively recently that he was that he started to go up. And he didn't even have that great of a pro day, or at least he didn't have a great pro day. So it's not even like a thing like that. So what were you saying, Adrian?
His first one was kind of unremarkable.
Yeah,
the second one, the one that everybody's going around and sharing, that one was not good.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. The first one, even that, it wasn't like a phenomenal day. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't phenomenal. I really don't know what they're saying. Again, I think Kyle Shanahan has had quarterbacks like him in the past and succeeded with them. I think that might be part of the reason why the 49ers are eyeing him, but other teams, I really just don't understand it. I don't know why they're doing that. It doesn't really make sense to me.
Adrian?
My thing is, I think that his stock hasn't necessarily risen. I think that I had him graded as a second-round prospect. I'm kind of harsh on quarterbacks. I never really believe that there are more than 3 or 4 who should go in a first round, lest you end up with a 2018 scenario where, the best quarterbacks were the last 2 of the first round 5 taken.
Or 2011, if we even want to bring that up.
Yeah, it's the same point, right? I rarely think there are more than 3 guys graded out to be first round. So I had him as an early second rounder, and I know a lot of people had him as a late first or a mid to late first. And I think that San Fran moving up is the thing that shot up his name, because I don't think I've seen his name tied to any other early drafting teams. Everybody else in these mocks always drafts around him, But the one thing that's kind of never changed is they had him going 3. When the Bears moved up from 3 to 2, we knew Mitch was their guy. When the Giants moved up from 15 to 6, we knew Daniel Jones was their guy. It doesn't mean that we thought that other teams in that range would take him. It means that we knew that he was their guy and that's who those teams were moving up for.
Nick?
Yeah, I agree with Adrian here. I think it's more that people generally expect the 49ers to go after Mac Jones, and they're expecting that to be the guy that they moved up to get. And it's also that I think he's also kind of risen up the boards a bit just because he's more of the prototypical, like what people think of a quarterback, what they're supposed to be. Just a statue in the pocket who goes through his progressions, played against tough competition, put up great stats. And, they're just mainly looking at that more than like what he's really great at and what he's just kind of okay at.
Yeah, to me, Mac Jones seems like another Alabama quarterback that was a great college quarterback, but in the NFL, he didn't have too much success. That being A.J. McCarron, he seems a lot like him to me. But the last guy I mentioned, Trey Lance, great athlete. He's got the Josh Allen comparison, went to a small school. What do we think is the ceiling on him? And do we think he could have a similar career path to Josh Allen? Or do we think, I don't know, I want to take him in the top 10. He's too risky. Jack, I'll start with you.
I think he is worthy of a top 10 pick. I do see the Josh Allen comparison. I mean, a very good runner. He has issues with inaccuracy sometimes, lots of potential. But again, I played at a smaller school, not great competition. And I think he does have a pretty high ceiling, but I also think he's a pretty low floor. I mean, we've seen it like with Carson Wentz, who, albeit had a very good 2017 season, but since then has been a little bit underwhelming. So I really don't know exactly what to think of Trey Lance. He could be great. He could be awful. I'm really not sure, but I do think that he has lots of potential, and I think that the Josh Allen comparison is fair.
Adrian?
I think that the Josh Allen comparison is fair, but there's a guy from his school who is the other side of the spectrum currently for these small school, no competition quarterbacks, and that's Carson Wentz. And once again, he had a meteoric rise, but also kind of a catastrophic fall. And so I think Carson Wentz is the descriptor. Josh Allen's a better descriptor of the play style for sure. But Wentz is my comparison for what we could see with Lance. We could see either or. We could see 13-3 OPOY candidate, but we could also see a guy who was almost booed out of his hometown, and I it's hard taking that shot when we only have 17 games of film to work on. I've been making Cardale Jones comparisons recently, even though I think Lance is a better prospect, but just because we have such an incomplete body of work that I'm scared to grade him too high.
Nick?
Yeah, I agree with everybody here that I believe that Trey Lance has a really high ceiling, and I think that he is definitely worth a first-round pick. But the one thing that really worries me about him is that he's only started 1 year at an FCS level without playing against opponents that North Dakota State was clearly better than. And it's a big jump to go from the FCS level where you're clearly the best team to the NFL level where you're going to probably be drafted by a team that is nowhere near the best team then. So he does worry me just because, experience at the college level and playing against tough competition still does matter. And I think he can be we can either look back at him and he might be one of the best, if not the best quarterback in this class, or he can be one of the worst, if not the worst. So it's a very risky.
Cam?
I think, like Nick said, it's very risky to take a quarterback who's only played 1 year in college. As my hat shows, we know a lot about that with Mitchell Trubisky and what he's turned into. And there's still life to Mitchell, but we won't talk about that. But yes,
the option here wasn't bad.
Yeah, I know. I still think there's life. Ethan will say otherwise, but I still think there's life to Mitch Trubisky. But that is a whole nother conversation. But I've been reading a little bit about Trey Lance, because honestly, I haven't watched him. But like Nick said, you go from being the bully in your conference because North Dakota State dominates everybody they play. They're usually the national champions in the FCS. This is a really good team. To going to maybe the little dog in the big pool now with the NFL. I think that could be a rude awakening for Trey Lance. I've read a little bit about his team. It sounds like he's played in a run-heavy offense. So that could be a problem, but you're right, only started 1 year, and he said he's inaccurate, on mid to intermediate throws. So boomer bust, really, I think, with Trey Lance. I think there's a big boom, like we've all said.
This next question is open to the floor. So you're an NFL GM, right? And your team desperately needs a quarterback. The guy you got, it's not that great, or you got an aging starter, and you have a pick that you can either trade up for or you can see if he falls to you. Would you waste a top 10 pick on Trey Lance? And maybe waste isn't the correct term, but would you use that pick on Trey Lance, or would you feel more comfortable if he fell to a team or just not draft him at all?
I don't think he falls out of the top 10. No way. There are too many teams that have been too aggressively pursuing quarterbacks for him to fall out. And I really think that 1, 2, 3 will all be quarterbacks, in my opinion. And when we look at the ones that they're projected to be right now, that will leave 2 on the board that, regardless of which ones those are, it won't be Lawrence and it probably won't be Wilson. But out of the remaining 3, 2 of them will be on the board from 4 through 10. I think that 4th pick is going to be a hot trade destination. And I really think that if it were to go the way that I have them graded out, the next one off would be Lance, and Jones would probably fall out of the top 10. But I recognize that Jones may well be off the board with San Fran, in which case you just sit and you let Lance come to you.
I'm curious, what other teams are high on Mac Jones other than the 49ers?
They've been the primary name attached to him. There were some early reports that the Patriots were showing interest. They were at the second pro day. A lot of people have memed Bill Belichick's reactions to some of those throws, so that may be less than likely. Jones really, I think a lot of teams that are interested in him are sitting in the back half of the first round, and so
that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
is if the 49ers get up there and they're like, hey, wait, let's take Fields, how far does Jones drop?
Jones could honestly have a Johnny Football drop, where what we all talked about him being a hot prospect and a Heisman candidate, and he got drafted at what, 25?
I think 22. I know Cleveland traded back in the first round to get him.
Yeah, but that's my point. I could see him doing that if he doesn't go at 3. Because like I said, I had him, Trask, and Mond all graded out in the second round.
Jack or Nick, any thoughts about Trey Lance?
I still think that he's definitely worthy of a top 10 pick. And like they've all said, there's no way he's gonna fall out of it. But like you asked, I think he's definitely worthy of a top 10 pick. The ceiling is so high that I think it's definitely worth taking a risk on him, especially if you can put him, like, maybe sit him behind a starter for a year and let him learn the offense and things like that. I think the ceiling is so high that he is absolutely worthy of a pick like that.
If Fields is gone, look at Atlanta as a possible home for him. If Fields is on the board, then look at Atlanta to take him. And if Atlanta decides to trade out of 4, then I would say look at a team like Minnesota, who's not in a terrible quarterback situation, but they're paying a guy a lot more than he's worth right now.
What does Minnesota have right now?
Kirk Cousins, I believe, still.
I'm talking about draft pick, first round draft pick.
They pick at 14.
Oh, no.
So they would have to, if they wanted to get one of the premier guys, they would have to move up.
I found it interesting that Denver at 9, I believe it's 9, that's where he's projected to take Trey Lance in the first round. And I find that interesting because I mean, I think Drew Lock's still got a lot of potential. I know he's young; he makes a ton of mistakes, but he's young. Like if you're gonna draft somebody 2, 1, 3 years ago, so for say, you gotta give that guy time to develop it. Are they already giving up on
Not if
Drew
you're
Lock?
Denver.
Yeah, I was going to say if I were Denver, I would at least give Drew Lock one more year.
John Elway is historically impatient.
Yeah,
Really?
I know, but I'm just saying if I were in that situation, I know Elway is impatient, but yeah. I mean, you remember Cortland Sutton, didn't he tear his ACL like the second game of the year?
Yeah.
Don't remind me, he was on my fantasy team.
But my point is, they gave up on Paxton Lynch in his second year. They gave up on the kid they drafted the year after Lynch, the same year they got him. They're giving up on Drew Lock right now. They don't. Ever since that little taste of Peyton Manning, they haven't been satisfied. And even then, that wasn't Peyton's best stuff, you know?
Yeah. I mean, first two years, though, were...
It ruined their expectations, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm curious about this one, too. 12th, there's a trade from the Miami Dolphins. The Eagles swapped up, I guess, or swapped down. I'm not sure.
Eagles swapped down.
I mean, they could take... I mean... The Eagles is not a bad destination either. I know they have Hurts there. Is Hurts the long-term solution?
By all indications, they're riding with Hurts
Really?
for at least another year. That's what it sounded like. If they get a primo guy that falls into their lap, I could see them taking him. But I don't think that they'll move out. They won't move out of 12 to grab a guy.
Yeah. And that's a good decision. I think Hurts, the way he played the back half of that season, I absolutely think he deserves this next season.
I'm gonna say I think Hurts at least deserves some time to see if he can be the guy.
Yeah.
I thought he played well enough.
3-1 with 2 good performances and 2 performances that weren't amazing but showed promise in certain plays.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts definitely showed he has some definite promise. But moving on. Cam, thank you for bringing up the Eagles. After making a trade to slide down to number 12 and the backup to number 6, my Miami Dolphins have been very active recently. A lot of people believe the Dolphins' top target should be Penei Sewell, the old lineman from Oregon, wide receiver Devontae Smith, the Heisman winner from Alabama, and Jamar Chase, the wide receiver from LSU. Now, guys, I want you to pitch to me, the Dolphins fan here, probably the lone Dolphins fan listening to this podcast, who I should want the Dolphins to take. Now, it can be any of the 3 I just said, or if you think there's a guy that I didn't mention that you think the Dolphins absolutely should take, should he be available at number 6, please don't hesitate to do so. Does anybody want to go first?
Oh, I'd love to.
All right, Adrian, take it away.
First off, out of the names you named, Penei Sewell is the guy to go to, right? The Dolphins, you want to protect your young QB. You're throwing everything behind Tua in the next few years, and you've just got to be prepared to set him up fully to succeed, and that starts with keeping him alive. That's something we saw last year in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow put on his deathbed halfway through the season, and also I think that Penei Sewell won't be there for the Dolphins, unfortunately, because of those Cincinnati Bengals, who also have a young quarterback and who are looking at the same thing, which is why I'm going to go off the board here and go for who I feel like is the best defensive player available, Patrick Surtain II. There was some conversation about getting Devontae Smith because Tua wanted a teammate that he spent some of his college days with. And I know that Surtain's not an offensive player, but he does fit that description, and he's also just an insane player. I think that he's the best defensive talent on the board and one of the best talents in this draft.
Yeah, so Surtain's a great player. I will counter this that the Dolphins already have 2 Pro Bowl corners in Byron Jones and Xavier Howard. Do you worry about that? That, even though you never have enough good corners, the Dolphins have other pressing needs. So
2 words. 2 words. Rookie deal. You know how much you can get? If I'm the Dolphins right now, I'm willing to take that risk because Byron Jones can net me a lot in return, and they're a very active franchise as far as the trades. I could see them wheeling and dealing and grab a guy like that, or pick him up and, hold him over with some other players. And also, you know, I think that if they do choose to hold on to all of them, no better way to train somebody up than to teach them by the best, right?
That's a good point. Jay, do you want to go next?
Yeah, well, first I want to agree with Adrian that I do think Patrick Surtain is the best defensive player in the draft. I had him rated at number 1 even before Caleb Farley's back surgery, so I just want to address that. I love Patrick Surtain, but I think that the Dolphins should take Devontae Smith. I think that wide receiver is a big need of theirs, and I think you can switch him with Jamar Chase as the wide receiver 1. I think they're both phenomenal. Either one of them can go number 1, but I think that Devontae Smith fits the Dolphins better, not only because of the college connection that Tua had, but also I think that it's no secret that Tua had a shaky rookie season. And I think a big problem that he had was the confidence because he was so used to throwing to guys that were so open at Alabama. And they're just not like that in the NFL. And he, a lot of times, did not have the confidence to throw to those contested receivers. And that's the kind of guy that Jamar Chase is. He's the guy that is not going to have a ton of separation. He's the guy that you're going to throw up the ball to for those 50-50 balls, and he's going to come down with them more than he does not. But Devontae Smith is not like that. He's an extremely great route runner. He will be open on almost any route. He's phenomenal. He's going to be a guy that can give Tua the confidence to throw to him on any play. And I think that he fits the Dolphins the best for sure.
Now I'm gonna play devil's advocate here with Devontae Smith just because it's my job here. But so do you worry about Devontae Smith's? A lot has been made about his frame. He's very slight. Some people have nicknamed him the Slim Reaper. Do you worry about Jack his frame holding up in the NFL, or do you think because of the recent rule change that have benefited offensive players that it's really just being overblown?
I don't worry about his size at all. I think that the main issue that receivers have with size is getting jammed to the line, and I don't think that he'll have that issue because his release is so fast off the line that I don't really think he's ever going to have to worry about things like that. He's fast enough and he's quick enough and just talented enough in general that he doesn't need to worry about that.
Cam, I saw you shaking your head, so you can go next.
Yeah, I think I've been put in a tough situation here, to be honest, as a result of this whole conversation, because I have the argument for Jamar Chase. Just by being out a year due to COVID-19 concerns, he didn't play for LSU this past season. I think that already sets him back at a disadvantage. Not playing football for an entire year, regardless of how many workouts you do, is going to be tough. So I think that really could crush him a little bit. But I mean, Devontae Smith, in my opinion, is the better receiver to take there. But I also think that it dictates on the pick of the Cincinnati Bengals, because I've seen reports that they are going to pick Penny Seal. I've also seen reports that they're going to pick Jamar Chase because of Joe Burrow was his teammate. Honestly, if I'm the Bengals, based on the fact that last year my starting dream quarterback, what did he tear his ACL and his MCL? Is that what happened?
Yeah, his whole knee got blown out.
I'm going to say I'm going to take a good pick here and pick Penny Sewell because I want to protect my quarterback. You still got Tyler Boyd, but you could use the second option. You could use another receiver. So I really think it dictates based on the Bengals pick if I am the Dolphins. But Jamar Chase is always a great option. Like Jack mentioned, he's a great 50-50 guy. And I watched him against Alabama in that crazy game that basically defined Joe Burrow's Heisman candidacy. He really torched some really good cornerbacks from Alabama. Then again, everybody did on the LSU defense, but this is a guy that's going to be really good. So, and like Jack mentioned as well, like the frame, you want to talk about physical frame, 6 foot 208. There it is. Really physical frame, great hands. He's going to be a good player. So I honestly think that you can't go wrong if you're in the Miami Dolphins position here. You've got 3-4 guys that you can take here that can all be franchise changers.
So do you think Jamar Chase has a, quote, higher ceiling to Devontae Smith, or do you think they're pretty relative, so it just depends on who you prefer?
Yeah, once again, I think about who you prefer. So if I'm looking at the Bengals wideout core, Tyler Boyd is Mr. Reliable. Like, Tyler Boyd's going to put up statistics. He's going to get you those fantasy points that you want. He's going to be like third, fourth, fifth in the league in catches. But you're looking for a guy that can bust one, that can really get you that deep threat. And I honestly think that I would say the ceiling probably goes higher to Devontae Smith than it does to Jamar Chase, just because I think personally, like, the separation is unreal. Like Devontae Smith is a separation catalyst. Like, he's unbelievable at getting that separation. I haven't seen just much of Jamar Chase recently. So, you can't, like I said, you can't go wrong.
No.
Yeah, I would want to go ahead and add on to Jamar Chase. I think it's worth noting that Justin Jefferson was also on that LSU team, and Jamar Chase was straight up the better receiver. And we saw how good Justin Jefferson was for Minnesota in his first season. So I think that's something that's worth of note. But I just think that Devontae Smith is a much better fit for Miami and for Tua than Jamar Chase is, just because, as brought up before, Tua is used to people being Alabama open, and Devontae Smith is gonna get Alabama open even in the NFL because he's such a good route runner. He's got a great release, and I just think that he's a better fit.
Yeah, so the guy I wanted going into this and after the question still hasn't changed, I still really want Devontae Smith, just because when I watched the Dolphins last year, the main problem that I saw was nobody can really do anything with the ball in their hands. And Devontae Smith can definitely do stuff with the ball in his hands. And to counter the Penei Sewell argument, well, I understand Penei Sewell is probably the better player right now. The Dolphins did spend 2 higher draft picks last year on O-linemen and Isaiah Jackson and Robert Hunt, who have developed somewhat thus far. So I don't know if you want to spend another one on an O-lineman when you already have 2 that are looking pretty good. But I definitely understand the Penei Sewell argument.
I want to point out real quick that the Dolphins did make an acquisition to acquire Will Fuller, the 5th, which is an important piece there because Will Fuller's that bust guy. You want to go deep, you want to throw it. If you're Tua, you want to air it out. There's Fuller for you. And your question is, you've got Devontae Parker. You still have Preston Williams as the 3rd option, who he's not great, but he's good. So what do you think is, if you're the GM, is the focus right now? Because I really think that decides what kind of pick you take here, is the focus. If you're focused on protecting Tua, you go there. If you're looking, in my opinion, if you're looking to win now, you go with the receiver because the pieces are there. Myles Gaskin is going to improve, but those 3 receivers can do some damage.
Yeah, so I would still take Devontae Smith. I just think he's the best fit to me, just for the Dolphins, for as we are presently constructed right now. The familiarity with Tua helps with that, his ability to get open. And also a lot of the receivers we have on the roster outside of Will Fuller are they're similar players, if you would, deep, not necessarily deep threats, but they're very reliable and they don't necessarily get that separation. Devontae Smith, like Jack and Nick have pointed out, he definitely gets that separation. So Devontae Smith has always been the guy that I have wanted, mostly because of the show he put on this past year where he absolutely torched literally anybody and everybody. He probably torched the bus on the way back too. But moving on to everybody's favorite team, the New England Patriots. They had a 7-9 season, a losing season for what feels like the first time in my whole lifetime. So, guys, what are we thinking the Patriots are going to do with their pick at number 15? Are we thinking they're going to stay put, trade back, or do you think they might try to trade up if a certain quarterback is available? We'll start with Adrian.
I'm not going to lie. For a while, I had them in the few teams that I thought Mac Jones would be interested in Mac Jones, but I couldn't see them grabbing him in the first. So I always just thought that they would sit, maybe try and trade back, because Bill loves doing that. But at 15, I think that they've got to read the draft as it comes to them, because a lot of the A1 franchise-changing guys will be off the board, but every now and then a couple slip, and if a couple do, then you've got to go for one of those. But really, I think that they've just got to sit at their pick, just ride the wave, see what falls to them.
Nick?
Yeah, I agree with Adrian. I just think that they have to go ahead and wait out the draft, see the best player that comes to their spot, and then make a decision based on that. I don't think it's any more complicated than that. New England's kind of a boring organization anyway, and they're probably going to be the boring thing.
Cam?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. They're projected to take Micah Parsons from Pennsylvania State. And I'm looking at their tacklers right now as well. Nobody in the starting linebacking core had over 50 solo tackles last year. I think that's a good pick there. If I'm looking at their defense, the one Patriots game, because honestly, since they were so bad, they weren't on TV as much, is I caught the 49ers game when the 49ers just absolutely blistered the Patriots. But the run game for the 49ers went to school on that New England defense. So I think Michael Parsons might be a great pick there, 15.
Jack?
I do think that if they don't trade down, they'll probably go defense here, but I don't think that Micah Parsons will be available. So if they want to go linebacker, I think they probably look at Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame. But I think they're more likely to go edge rusher or D tackle. So I think that they will more than likely, or they should take Gregory Rousseau from Miami, who I think is the best pass rusher in the draft. So I think they can go there, or they can go Christian Barmore, defensive tackle from Alabama. I think they take one of those three, assuming that Michael Parsons is already gone. But if Michael Parsons is there, I absolutely think he'll be a steal at 15. But I think more than likely they go defense, and I think it'll probably be one of those three.
So, Jack, I've got the CBS app pulled up right now. Who is projected to take Parsons? I'm curious. Who else?
I think he's could go 9 to Denver if they don't take a quarterback. If they don't trade up, I think they desperately need a linebacker. I think that Denver will be a great fit for Michael Parsons.
Okay.
So the Patriots last year, they didn't really have any receivers on the roster. So I'm just curious, guys. Do you think there's a chance they take a receiver at 15, noting that Jalen Waddle, who's kind of the next best guy after Chase and Devontae Smith, is most likely off the board? So do you think there's a chance they go receiver? I've seen Rashad Bateman. I've seen Rondell Moore. I've seen some other dudes. Do you think there's a chance of that?
I'm going to say if they get the right guy to follow them, then, yeah, I could see them doing that. Again, I don't think that Devontae Smith and Jamar Chase are not even going to sniff them unless they trade up. And I highly doubt that Jalen Waddle would fall to him. But knowing New England, I can see them going after like a Rondell Moore if they have a shot to get him.
I think that Waddle is their guy if he's at 15, because that would just be insane. If the team hadn't snapped him up at that point, especially with a lot of opinion, being on his side as one of the tier 1 receivers coming into this whole process. If he's at 15, then he's absolutely a choice. If not, then I don't know if you take Rondell Moore or if you trade back and try and grab him in the 20s, because I think that from the 20s through the late second round, that whole stretch will have a lot of receivers go in it, because we've got Moore, we've got some of the other guys y'all have mentioned. I don't know if I heard Kadarius Toney's name, but I want to throw him in there as a potential option. I think that that's going to be the run. If they want a receiver that badly, then I think they're going to work their way back and pick up some picks while they do it.
Jack?
Yeah, I think it's pretty unlikely unless one of those top 3 receivers falls to 15 that they'll draft a receiver. I think that they did a lot of work with pass catchers in the offseason, or picking up pass catchers with the additions of Johnny Smith and Hunter Henry and Nelson Aguilar. So I don't think that they will unless Waddle potentially falls to them, because I think that they have much more pressing needs on the defensive end. And I also want to throw one more name in there. I forgot about Kwity Paye. He's another edge rusher from Michigan. I also think is a great edge rusher, and I think that they could also go with him there.
Kwity Paye is a good
Cam, any thoughts?
Another name is Terrace Marshall from LSU. He's not bad. I mean, have we already said him, by the way? Or no? I don't know if everybody.
No, we haven't brought him up yet.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty solid. I could see them, but very like Jack said, I think it's very unlikely unless they get one of those big names. I see them going defense.
Yeah, I also see them going defense. But moving on, every year there's always some draft sleepers that seemingly come out of nowhere. guys that just aren't as highly touted, or they didn't exactly have the best resume, or whatever the case may be. So this year, who are some guys that you can see potentially going later, first round, maybe the middle rounds, maybe at the end of the draft, that could see having a real day one impact on their teams? I'll start with Jack.
So I'm actually going to go with the guy that Cam just mentioned, Terrace Marshall. He's a wide receiver from LSU, and I think he's phenomenal. In 2019, while behind Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and other guys, he put up 671 yards and 13 touchdowns. And last year, in 7 games, he put up 731 yards and 10 touchdowns, including a game against Missouri with 235 yards and 3 touchdowns, and a game against Texas A&M with 134 yards and a touchdown. So I think this guy is phenomenal, and right now it's looking like he's probably going to go on the second day. I think that he's a guy that could definitely have a day one impact.
Cam?
Here's a name y'all need to know. Javonte Smith from the University of North Carolina. No, I'm
Javonte Williams?
Come on, UNC. You're a UNC fan.
Oh, come on.
You gotta take the UNC hat off.
He's gonna
take it off. Don't just motion to it.
Overall,
take it off.
And he's gonna get taken by who has the 20th pick? I haven't even looked. The Bears. Forget Montgomery. We're throwing him out. We're throwing Javonte Williams. But this last guy I saw here, Asante Samuel Jr., I saw him with Florida State. Florida State is always it's not DBU, but they always put out some good DBs. And I think that, he's projected to go to the Buccaneers, which the Buccaneers don't need anything on their roster right now to compete for a world championship next year. But I could totally see them picking up Asante Samuel and just giving them pure depth where they need it.
I would actually agree with what Cam said earlier and actually add Michael Carter to that list. And I think Javonte Williams and Michael Carter would probably be able to make a big impact on an NFL team, but not necessarily be like a super high up pick. For everybody who watched Carolina, Sam Howell gets a lot of the hype, and deservingly so, and he will be a first round pick next year, barring a disastrous season. But Javonte Williams and Michael Carter made that offense run, made that offense go. They were the main catalyst for everything that Carolina really did. And I could see them stepping right into an offense and producing a lot for a team in the future. Also, running back is probably one of the easier positions to learn from the college to the NFL level, because either you can hit the hole or you can't. So, yeah, those are the 2 guys I'm looking at.
Adrian, I know you always got some sleepers.
First off, I've just got to come with the technicality of I don't think Javonte Williams is a sleeper at this point. His name has been, he's one of those guys who are so commonly called underrated that eventually they're properly rated. And I think during a lot of the college season, he definitely was an underrated guy, but his name I've heard build up a little bit of steam to be a late first to mid second round, depending on the fit and where Najee Harris falls. But my sleeper guy, actually, I was gonna be a homer and go with Chaz Surratt. But I'm gonna switch it up, take it away from the University of North Carolina for a second. And I want to say Shakur Brown out of Michigan State. He's a corner. He's 5'11", so he doesn't have the most amazing size. But I've watched the guy play, and I like what I see. I do. He's predicted to be a day 2 guy, probably mid-third, late-third round. But I think that he could really shore up a couple of defenses in the cornerback rotation. Start him off as a 3rd guy and see where it goes.
Yeah, those are some great names. The guy I would like to personally throw in as the Duke comer coming out is Chris Rump III. He's an edge rusher from Duke. He's really fast, really athletic, and prior to the season, I believe he had like the 2nd best defensive grade of any player in the country, which is incredible considering Duke doesn't exactly have the greatest football team in the world. So
what?
I think
are you sure about that?
I don't know.
I thought
USC
they were
fan that
like
didn't know your
top
running
10.
back's name. Take the hat off. Anyways,
Oh my gosh.
Moving on to our last topic. Every year, we want to know who's going to take the biggest W at the draft. So what teams, and now this is very preemptive because we don't even know who's getting picked where. But for the sake of this, which teams do you think we'll be talking about saying take the biggest W? We'll start with Adrian.
I'm going to be the safe guy here. And teams that I think will take big W's in the draft, capital letter here. First, above everybody else, I'm going to go with the Ravens. Because they've just, year after year, they've shown that they have a good sense of management and they're typically pretty solid with the draft choices. I believe in them, and I believe that we're going to be looking back and going, they got some guys. They got some guys that we didn't expect to be available, and we don't know how they pulled it off.
Jack.
I'm not going to say a specific team. I'm just going to say whoever ends up getting Justin Fields, especially if he falls out of the top 4. Because, I mean, we've talked about him a ton already, but, I mean, he's a guy that in years, without Trevor Lawrence, he could be worthy of the first overall pick, and he's a guy that could potentially fall out of the top 5. So I think that whoever gets Justin Fields is going to be a winner in the draft.
Nick.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with Jack. I think it's a little premature to just just say a team's gonna win the draft, unless you want to say like the Jaguars would win because they got the number 1 pick when Trevor Lawrence came out of Clemson. But yeah, whoever ends up with Justin Fields, especially if he falls in the draft, is gonna be a big time.
Cam?
I'm going to give y'all a sleeper team here to watch out for next year. Well, they're not really sleepers because they made the playoffs, but the Washington football team. They're projected to take Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from, I believe that's how you pronounce it, from Notre Dame. And I watched him play against Clemson, and that dude is versatile. Guy can make a play on the edge. He can stop the run. He can pick off a pass. He can do everything. He can play zone, man-to-man. He can cover your star running back. He played well against ET in that game as well. I just think Washington, they're sleepers. They got a great defense already. I really think that if they, look offensively to make that jump, that next year they could be a really good team.
Adrian, I cut you off there. Is there something you'd like to say?
Oh, I wanted to say, when Nick mentioned the Jaguars, I think that they could also be somebody we talk about, especially coming out of day 1 as potential draft winners. And it's not for the reason you think. Obviously, everybody is basically penciled in the Trevor Lawrence pick, and that will shine favorably on them, at least coming out of the draft into the season. But that 25th pick, they've got a lot of options there depending on what they need, depending on what they want to do. And there will be a lot of solid talent on the board, and the way that these drafts work, there will always be 1 or 2 guys who slip beyond expectations. So look at them to do something potentially dangerous with that pick.
Definitely. I don't really have a sleeper team. If I had to pick one, I would say the Miami Dolphins for obvious reasons. Not like a bias or anything. But guys, do we have any final thoughts? Anything y'all want to get off your chest about the draft?
Yeah, when the Dolphins trade around and end up with 30 first-round picks next year, we'll understand what happened.
I hope that happens. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up here. If you made it this far, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.